Hello again. Welcome to Maths is Not a Mystery. Today we're going to be looking at index laws. This is going to take us up to about grade 6, a good way through the higher paper. Indices are the little numbers that float above a real number. So the index number on there is the little 2, which tells us that that says 3 squared, which means it's 3 times 3. The little 2 tells us that there are 2 3s. 3 to the power 4 means 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, which, if you remember, is 3 times 3 makes 9, times 3 makes 27, times that by 3 makes big. Okay, so the index numbers, the indices, are the little numbers that tell us how many times we're going to keep on multiplying the same number. Now, there are 6 laws with the index numbers, and you need to be able to understand them as you start moving into the higher paper. And the 6 laws get steadily more and more complicated. We're going to start with the easiest one, but actually we're going to come back to the easiest one to prove why it's the case. Because although it's the easiest one, it doesn't really make a lot of sense on its own. So the easiest one is x to the power 0, any number to the power 0, and the answer to that question is 1. Anything to the power 0 is 1. 1 to the power 0 is 1, 5 to the power 0 is 1, 10 to the power 0 is 1, 0 to the power 0 is 1. And towards the end of this video, when we've gone through the other index laws and they make more sense, I'm going to come back and show you why that is the case. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 1, anything to the power 0 is 1. Okay, let's start with some fairly easy index laws that start to make sense straight away. So I'm going to write this one down. X to the power n times x to the power m. Now remember that these are already multiplication things, aren't they? These little index numbers are multiplications. They're telling us how many times we multiply x by. The law for this one says that the answer is x to the power n plus m. Let's put some numbers to it. So x squared times x to the power 5 equals x to the power 2 plus 5, which of course is x to the power 7. And it's as simple as that. Providing these two numbers that are both x's are the same, and we'll talk in another video about what happens when they're different. If these two numbers are the same, we simply add together the index numbers to get our final answer when it says times in the middle. Okay, so that's your second index law that we're going to look at there. There isn't any particular order that these index laws go in. Different people will tell you different numbers. It makes no difference. I'm just going to put the numbers there so that we can see that we've done all 6. The reverse of this one, so I'm going to call it law number 3, is x to the power n divided by x to the power m. And common sense might be telling you here, if we added because there was a multiplication sign in the middle, then we're going to take away when there is a division sign in the middle. So the answer to this would be x to the n minus m power. Put some numbers to it, and I'm going to write it out in the alternative way just so that you can see both. So x to the power 6 divided by x squared. So remember that this is the same as this. The little divide sign with a line and 2 dots over it is exactly the same as a line and 2 numbers over it, at either side of it. Okay, so x to the power 6 divided by x to the power 2 is x to the power of 6 minus 2, which of course is x to the power 4. Okay, excuse me. So when there's a multiplication sign in the middle, we add the powers. When there's a division sign in the middle, we take away the powers. If we go to this one, which I'm going to call the fourth rule, this time it's a multiple multiplication, x to the power n in brackets multiplied by the power of m. This is like a mega multiplication. This is already multiplied, x times x times x times x, whatever that number stands for. And whatever it is then multiplied up again by the m number. So what we're talking about here is it's x to the power of n times m. So if we have x to the power 3, x cubed, all to the power 5, then the answer is x to the power of 3 times 5, which is x to the power 15. Okay, so multiplication sign in between them, we add the powers. Division sign, we subtract the powers. Brackets, where we're multiplying what's inside the bracket by what's outside the bracket, then we multiply the powers. Okay, now just a couple more that we've got to do, and these last two are a little bit more complex. You notice all the numbers so far, all the m's and n's have all been positive. I'm going to go to a negative this time, and we're going to have x to the power of minus n. Now if you come across that, what's going to happen there is the following. Let's just think about this over here. If you think of x squared and then have a minus in front of it, we're talking about x to the power of minus 2. What does that mean? Well, it actually means this: 1 over x to the power n, which in number terms would be 1 over x squared. 1 divided by x squared. Okay, so you're turning it into what's known as a reciprocal. So a minus, a negative power, is 1 over the number to the power without the minus number on it, without the minus sign on it. Okay, so let's go back to this one. X to the power minus 2 is the same as 1 over x squared. Alright, that's a complicated one. Maybe we should put some numbers to it. Let's, instead of having an x, let's have 3 to the power of minus 2. So that becomes 1 divided by 3 squared. And then you just get a calculator, because that then becomes, obviously, 1 divided by 9. Well, that's actually the answer in that case. If you want it in fractions, that's done. It's 1/9. If you want it in decimals, get a calculator and do 1 divided by 9. Okay, so far so good. Now we're going to go to the most difficult one, the final one, and this is related to square roots. So let's take a look at it. This is an index that looks like this: x to the power of n divided by m. X to the power of n divided by m means the mth root of x to the power n. Now if I put that into some kind of numbers, let's have x to the power of 6 divided by 2. And that would mean m was at the bottom, so that's the square root, the bottom number, the denominator of your fraction, the square root of x to the power 6. If we put this into some numbers, let's have 2 to the power of 6 over 2. Then that becomes the square root of 2 to the power 6. Now 2 to the power of 6 means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32, times 2 is 64. So that becomes the square root of 64, which of course is 8. That's very convenient that that was one that we knew. If it was something that we didn't know, if that number that we ended up with was a more complex number, or the root that we had to find was more complex, obviously you'd do it on a calculator. Nobody's expecting you to do all of this in your head when the numbers get difficult. So that is the final one of the rules. That's going to be what I'm going to call rule number 6, because it's the hardest. I did say at the beginning that I would show you why something to the power 0 was 1. And I'm going to show you that right now, because it's quite interesting. Now that you know a few more details, we can do a little proof of why it would be. So let's choose some numbers. Let's do 2 to the power 3 divided by 2 to the power 3. And that means 2 times 2 times 2 over 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, that's 8 over 8. The answer to 8 over 8 is 1. So if we do it with numbers, and we turn these numbers into real, actual answers, then we've got an answer of 1. Now I can do it differently. Let's see whether this makes sense. 2 to the power 3 over 2 to the power 3. Do it in index form, that's 2 to the power of 3 minus 3. Because remember, when you divide, you subtract the indices. 2 to the power of 3 minus 3 is 2 to the power of 0. Let me write that as a 0 instead of a blob. 2 to the power 0. Now, what's happened there? We've done the same sum twice. We've done it in spreading out, expanding the numbers. 2 times 2 times 2 makes 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1. We've done it by index form. 2 to the power 3 minus the other 3. And that becomes 2 to the power 0. These two things are exactly the same answer to the same question, done in a different way. Whatever numbers you put in here, you will always end up with a 0. And if you put them in here, you will always end up with 1. So, 2 to the power 0 is 1. I hope the index laws make some sense. They're quite complicated. Again, you have to learn them. There's a practice book available with Maths is Not a Mystery on Amazon. There's a link at the bottom of this video to show you how to get to it. I hope it makes sense. I hope you've enjoyed what you've watched. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.